Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Stephanie J. Wong, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and the founder and host of the Color of Success podcast. Today, I'm here with Dr. Jenny Wu, and we're talking about her 52 Essential Relationship Skills card deck. And I'm super excited because Dr. Wu was on our podcast, and I get to record something with her to talk a little bit more about how to build empathy.
First of all, we're excited to do this giveaway, and thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. Just really quick, in terms of 52 Essential Relationships, it's really a deck to help us bridge the types of misunderstanding that we tend to get in various forms of relationships, whether it's with a friend, with a loved one, with our family, or even at work. And, as human beings, especially nowadays, we just crave so much for that close bond and relationship with others. But in my research, one of the biggest barrier is just how do we actually do that, right? What language can we use without feeling like we're being misunderstood or second guessing if the other person really actually gets us? So the deck, the card is really working around the types of language that will bridge that understanding and create the closer bond in terms of relationship, trust, and understanding. And it gives us everyone the permission to be able to do that, right? Because a lot of the times it's also, well, even if I have the language, I mean, when should I do it? How do I do it? Will the other person be open to what I'm saying? Can I really show my true self and true colors? So today, I love to hear from you, Stephanie. Like, what do you think, people could use it, how they could use it, and what do you like about the cards?
Well, I think they're very, very understandable and easy to read. They're very, very cute too. I'm a big person on the design of things because I don't like things that are super complicated. As a psychologist, we want to explain things not in psychobabble, as some of my colleagues would say, that aren't psychologists. And I think these cards can be implemented at any point in a relationship, whether you've been together for like 2 weeks or decades. I actually, when I was going through these cards, talked with my husband and it opened up conversation that we haven't had. And I've been with him for over 20 years. So it just goes to show that personally and professionally that I can use these cards in various contexts.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And that really is the design of the cards. I love how you said psychobabble, right? And sometimes when I give people these cards, they're like, oh my gosh, this is like so simple, right?
Mhm.
And simple is a good thing. You want it to be cleverly simple so that it's easily like actionable and implementable. It's doable, right? I think a lot of the times what I see is people try to impress each other, right? Or one up each other. But at the end of the day, let's just get to that common language. And it's simple, common, to the point language that we can all understand each other instead of busy impressing each other, right? With perhaps our language or the stuff that we know. So I'm curious, like, what are some of the cards that you felt were really useful? And even, it's so great to hear that it opened up the conversation, which I'm sure you and your partner communicate so well, but it evened up even more.
Well, I picked quite a few, but one of them that I really, really liked is the value card. Let me make it closer. You matter to me because, and three things I value in people are. And I think that really opens up gratitude and an understanding of what the person asking the question, um, the receiver is really looking for in terms of a relationship. Values are just so important. I do pretty much the ACT values and goals worksheet with almost every client in private practice because I really look at values as the North Star.
Mhm.
And when we're making decisions and goals and so forth, is it consistent or inconsistent with our values? And how can I live more fully to move towards those values? And values are not to be confused with goals because values can never be achieved. They're aspirational. versus goals, those are achievable. And just because you say, I love you to your spouse as a goal every day doesn't mean like, oh, okay, I have a great marriage and I'm done. Right. So I think just being accepting that values will guide us and priorities in terms of values may change over time.
Yeah, I love that. So very much North Star. And I do this exercise a lot with my students and clients as well. And I think, it's beneficial for all the people involved who are doing this exercise. One is, the person might be reflecting, what are my values, right? It's a reminder to yourself and how you might drive your goals based off of your value. Are you off track, really, right? Are you chasing that shining object? Are you doing something to please others, right?
Yes.
And who are you really? And then at the same time, to the person that's listening, right, you get to really hear at the depth of, the levels possible of who this person is and what matters, what they truly value the most. So it really gets everybody in tune with each other and on the same page. And it's one of those exercises that, it's not like a one-time thing. You do a check off the box. I've got my
Right.
values, right? But it's really revisiting it, whether it's by yourself or with each other, with a complete different types of people, right? I think the more we can revisit, remind, regrain, and accept and understand and broadcast our values, that also goes into our boundaries, right? Creating those healthy boundaries, either within ourselves, but with other people as well.
I think that's so important to say because even though we tend to talk about relationships with another person, there's the relationship with ourselves, and a very powerful thing to start diving deeper into and ask, well, what are my values? How would I answer this with my partner? Or maybe if you don't have a partner, romantic partner right now, can you do it with friends? And also, the more clarity that you have in the relationship with yourself, you can build stronger bonds when you do decide to start dating somebody or being in a committed long-term relationship.
Yeah. And, if so happens that you're with someone who's maybe more resistant to stuff like this, right? They're like, what's that soft fluff values? What's that? Like,
Yeah.
let's talk about what we're going to get done today, right? And that's totally practical and understandable, right? So the way the cards are designed is that it is from different sort of levels of complexity and difficulty. So to open up a conversation with someone maybe you've been having conflicts with, not talking as openly, right? Or you're not so certain where they stand. You can be guided by these cards where, say, the A's, 2, 3s are the easier um, things to talk about. And you slowly peel back the layers to get to the value card. And each of the suits, like the hearts, stand for something like nurturing, building that trust first, right? Before you can keep each other accountable, right? And so it goes to there. And so one of the card before the value is very concrete. So for example, what does success mean to you? Right. And I
Which
feel like, and
is
right.
which is what we talked about on the podcast, right? Is that it changes over time.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's good that it changes over time. And as we get wisdom, perspective, experience, and having sort of tried and played and like, this is not for me, this is not what success is. Right. So again, another card to visit and revisit a lot by yourself and with other people. Yeah, good tie-in to the podcast episode. So definitely check that out if you haven't. Yeah. And what are some other cards? I'm so curious.
Sure. Um, this one is what questions can I ask you to understand you better, and what is the best way to communicate with you? That was the one of the ones that my husband and I talked about, and I think that that's really, really important because when you're with someone for a good amount of time, there can be a lot of assumptions. The script seems to be already written, and really to get a better understanding of each other at this point in your life, that really opens up a lot of dialogue. Um, let's see. This one's good. How would you like me to describe you when talking to other people? What strengths would you like to be known for? So it kind of is twofold, right? Is like, how can I communicate how I feel about you to other people and obviously not be disparaging. And then the other part is how the person is living or working towards their values as well. Because again, a very acceptance and commitment therapy approach
Mhm.
of, I don't want to be too morbid, but what would you like people to say at your funeral, or what would you like your gravestone to say? And I think in those instances, many people wouldn't want to hear, oh, that person should have worked harder. That
Yeah.
that's even though working hard is very an important skill, I think it is a talent, as I heard from TXT on Suga's interview with them. There's still this idea of where are you devoting your energy towards, and who are you putting into your inner circle?
Yeah, it's so funny. So you did a podcast episode with the Perner track, which I'm a huge
Yes.
fan. And so that was really cool, right? So that's where, like, how do you want people to describe you? Who do you really want to be known as? And what is your true purpose? That like resonates so much. And just on the topic of workplaces, I actually use this card when I facilitate team building and leadership development, whether it's a conference, an icebreaker, or team meeting. And this, it really, you know, it gives people the permission and the space, that psychological safety to say, you know what, I would love to be described as someone who's just not just hardworking, but who is strategic, right? Who is a
Mhm.
team player. And so it gives people almost like it helps you understand what you're aspiring to be, but it also gives you the permission to say, hey, advocate for me in such specific ways, because I cannot tell you where, you know, there are a lot of amazing employees and talents. And perhaps you've been in a company for some time and you became known as, say, for example, the person who takes great notes, right? Or the person who speaks really well, but maybe you're no longer interested in knowing those strengths because you're going to be pigeonholed and to doing those things over and over again, whereas you maybe want to broaden your skills and be known as something else completely different. So it creates a great opportunity for you to stand up for yourself and clarify with everyone, this is great, but it's time. I like to actually be known as this, right? And so imagine communicating that with your manager, with your teammates. And if everybody knows, then you will be able to have more opportunities presented to your way that's really aligned with, again, your values and, of course, your goals and what you like to be.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think it gives space too for historically marginalized individuals to really say, hey, I don't, especially women of color, I'm not going to be the secretary of the meeting. This is my level. And I think that was really apparent in the interview that I had with Natasha Kwan, a lawyer and advocate for AAPI community and rights and so forth, is that we are not necessarily the legal aides. We are the lawyer. We are, we are the doctors in the room, and our stimulus value may really be perceived as someone who is an administrative support. Now, there's nothing wrong with being an administrative support. And you don't want to assume that just based on how someone looks that they are doing a specific job. And so I think it does facilitate respect and puts people's goals out there in the universe, because it
Yeah.
might not be on the radar that you want a promotion or you want these kinds of responsibilities versus what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's why I made them into card formats, because sometimes these conversations are very isolated once a year, kind of at your reviews, annual reviews, but
Yeah.
it's sort of, sort of broadcasting it to the universe, right? Make it known. It has to be continuous and consistent, both to yourself and others. And so when you have these cards, it sort of disarms everybody in the room. And it's a card. It's fun. It's literally like 1 or 2 sentences, right? What's the harm in that? And so some of it are actually fill in the blank. And so it puts everybody at ease, and having that base of understanding, and again, permission to vocalize these things in non-confrontational format. Because a lot of the times, like, people of color, sometimes when you vocalize your struggles, it is hard. You have to balance, like, how do I be seen as someone who's not complaining, who's not
Right.
confrontational, but really, really vocalizing my unique experiences, right? Whereas the people you're vocalizing it to, maybe like, well, where do I start? I feel so paralyzed. I don't know what language to use that doesn't appear to me as demanding or insensitive, So
Yeah.
it just puts everybody in the same place. Any other thoughts or cards that you want to share?
Um, this one's also something that is asked very often, but in 1, 3, or 5 years, I want to blank and blank. Again, it goes back to like long-term planning and future orientation. And at the same time, I don't know, when we're getting really busy in our day-to-day lives, we're like, well, this is working towards my 3-year goal, right? And so I think
Mhm.
it reminds yourself of like, have my goals changed? What am I working towards? I think also the meaning and purpose behind doing specific things. I mean, for you and me, we've connected on a deeper level because we are, like you said, rarities in this business, and really supporting each other as women, as friends, and knowing that, hey, we want to increase emotional intelligence across many populations. And maybe in more traditional cultures, emotions aren't necessarily emphasized as a skill or a muscle to build. And really, when you're operating the world with other people, unless you're like living in a cave and kind of rejecting society, you're going to have to interact with people. And it does take, I always tell my daughters, read the room and then try to explain that to an elementary school kid, right? They're like, what does that mean? But they're starting to get it, right? It's like, people may not be ready to hear certain feedback, or maybe we're not on that topic. And so really trying to teach even children whom you often work with that this is something that you can do to be more empathic, to understand people better. Because if we're training our kids or preparing them for some of these tougher conversations in life, hopefully, again, they're our future, and that they can start teaching other people or showing people compassion. Now, again, I'm not advocating you like show 100% empathy for someone who's bullying other people, but I think it's a nice opportunity to be able to role model and maybe open up a conversation if you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. And another resource free that I wanted to provide, especially on the topic of demonstrating or expressing empathy, is this goes in handy in terms of teaching children, whether you're a parent or an educator, is so you'll get find this funny, Stephanie, but interesting. So I started creating YouTube videos with my kids.
Mhm,
And with my kids, I mean, they are the YouTubers on these topics, like how do you read social cues?
mhm,
And how do you even ask for help? How do you apologize? And of course, the topic, how do you demonstrate empathy? And so, my daughter gives the rundown, she's a fourth grader, to other kids. What's the difference between sympathy and
mhm.
empathy? How do you actually demonstrate empathy as a child, right? And as an adult. And these are often quite intimidating topics. And sometimes we don't talk about it as adults or parents because we don't know if we actually got it right. And so these short, like 3-minute YouTube videos will kind of give you the download. And again, very simple language and terms so that you can practice it right away. But certainly these are the skills that are really never goes out of style, and that you really need them, maybe even if you're in a cave, because
With yourself, yeah,
with
you might need
yourself,
them.
right? Because emotions are, I tell this
Complex.
to, yeah, and I tell these to even like my engineering students, and working professionals. They're data, right? They're data to tell you what you need and what you need to do, and they're also data signals to other people to let them know what is it that you need. And if you want to do well in life and to, influence others, to persuade others, you need to sort of utilize the right emotion in the right way and the right context in order to get heard and not just be understood, but get people to do what you're trying to tell them to do. And so, yeah, so it's better sooner than later. It's never too late, but it's a very consistent skill that you need to work on, observe, and reflect, on an ongoing basis.
And one last note is that you're going to make mistakes. It's not going to land perfectly, if ever. And so not being afraid of avoiding the topics and conversation, because that's another way where it may be a barrier to building empathy. It's like, talking about emotions or talking about how I can be helpful to somebody, like, or even receiving the help. Like, you don't want to appear quote unquote weak. And at the same time, there's a strength in really connecting with other people, and even just acknowledging, like you said, how to apologize. There's a fine line between women tending to apologize for everything and truly apologizing for something that you may feel sorry about, or that you bump into someone and may hurt them or whatnot. That's a physical marker, but sometimes you may say something that is hurtful, that it was not with malintent, and at the same time needs a genuine apology to move forward in a relationship.
Yeah, very much. So the insight to know when to do these things, right, to the right degree. And again, goes into sort of understanding your boundaries. Who am I, right? And that sign of strength in being able to say, I'm sorry, I messed up. And again, like just like you said, no one gets it 100% because things happen in different types of situations,
Mhm.
time, context, and there's just no way, like we can get it.
Yeah.
And especially in this, I would say this now increasingly AI driven time, those are really the only skills that we actually have to our advantage, the humanist in us. And those are the skills, again, are the data to help us think critically about the type of information we're receiving, whether it's from other people or from AI, to synthesize and understand, well, is this really what I should be doing? Right.
Yes.
So that's incredibly, I would say, even more important in this day and age.
Absolutely. And I think especially with AI, what we know from technology through the pandemic is that talking to screens, while it's super convenient, there's something qualitatively different being in the room with someone, being able to give them a hug, a kiss, or whatnot. And so I think even though AI is a powerful tool, there's still that human component. Like you said, we're not robots. It's complex. You and I are not perfect in doing this, even though we're clinically trained. When we're stressed out, we revert, not just us, but most humans revert to their patterns, which can be maladaptive as well. So I think these cards might really help with guiding us in the right direction when we are feeling stressed out.
Yeah, great points. So I want to end it by also providing some additional resources that's a part of the card. So that it actually comes with an online emotional intelligence assessment. These are research oriented you can take it. I think it's like 5 to 10 minutes and you get the results in terms of, how are you doing in terms of socially, right? In terms of reflecting self-awareness and all the good stuff like that. So everybody's busy, so we can pinpoint exactly what we need to work on and maybe what our loved ones, other people on our teams could work on a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
It's black and white. It tells you what you need to work on. So there's no like pushing back to that. So that is part of it. And it also comes with an online course of some of the lessons that I often share at the university level with students when I do the emotional intelligence certificate program. So people will get access to some of those lessons, like how to give and receive feedback. Right. That's also really important. And then just in general, there's like videos and other support services online. So feel free to check it out.